Thanks so much for being here. I'm Caleb Silver, the editor-in-chief of Investopedia. Really delighted to be here. Special thanks to Bria and the assembly team for putting together a great afternoon, fascinating panels. I have the privilege of having a powerhouse of a panel with me, and I'm really excited about it. We're going to be talking about influence. We're going to be talking about women and money. We're going to be talking about education, and we're talking to people that really know this subject really well. Just a couple stats, and I'm not going to bemoan these because you guys have heard these probably over and over again. But women are controlling about $24 trillion in global wealth, and that's only going to go up over the next few years. They make smarter investing decisions. 95% say the financial services industry doesn't speak to them, which is a huge mistake. 50% say they need to justify their purchases and their money decisions, right? So through all of this, we have seen this growing movement of individuals, companies, organizations that are stepping into the fray to provide advice, to provide education, and then in some cases to provide what we call influence. And what does influence mean today? Influence is such a powerful word, but it really means the power to change or affect someone or something. And in financial services, in health, on the internet, on social media, influence has become super powerful. So we're going to get into it with a great group. Let me introduce my panel here. My fellow editor, Sally Holmes, from the editor-in-chief of InStyle, is with us. Ramona Ortega, the founder of Wealthbuild.ai, welcome. Amanda Wolfe, the founder and CEO of SHEWOLFEOFWALLSTREET.com. You can find her on Instagram. And Syama Bunten, the founder and CEO of Scaling Retail. Bunch of different perspectives, all fascinating. So let's get into it. I want to start with you, Ramona. Trust, authenticity, purpose is so important today, especially in a world that's moving more and more digital, right? More and more AI, who to believe, what's real, what's not. You've built a company on this, you've built a bunch of companies, but why is this so important right now when it comes to using influence and voice across social media and the internet, especially around money?
Absolutely. I think at the end of the day, money has always been a trusted relationship, right? Traditional financial advisors base that relationship on trust, and banks have always did that too. They build relationships and communities around trust. So I think as whether you're influenced, and by the way, it's interesting, I don't actually consider myself an influencer as much as a builder, right? I'm a builder in technology, hoping to close the wealth gap. And this came out of my own experience and not understanding the full impact of money, having grown up very working class, and then worked on Wall Street and got the inside look at the belly of the beast, understanding that it's not complicated, but there's many moving pieces. So the trusted messenger is really important, and right? So a lot of the work that I focus on is influence in cultural relativity around money. Communities of color deal with money differently. Latinos deal with money differently. Different Latinos in different parts of the country, right? There's so women, we all talk about and think about money differently. And I think you'll hear this on the panel, which is that the stories are personal, which is why it's so important to lead with the stories and then think about, okay, how do you build the trust? And for us, building the trust is how do we use technology to scale a trusted financial advice, right? And AI is giving us this opportunity, but there is still a lot of learning to be done. We use retrieval augmented generative AI as a way to ensure the trust is there so that we're not just pulling from ChatGPT. So I'll end it there, but I think that trust is the fundamental foundation, which is why the messengers are important.
Yeah, well, let's talk to a messenger, Amanda. Accessibility, right? Meeting your users where they are, but also relating to them from your own personal background, which is a big part of your origin story. Give us a little bit of why you got into this in the first place, and you've built a pretty big follower base of 300,000 plus just on Instagram. So tell us why you did it, what was the why, the origin story, and how you translate that and relate that to your followers.
Yeah, so I come from some pretty humble beginnings. My parents were both addicted to drugs. So growing up, I lived in poverty, very bad poverty, begging for food from grocery stores and gas stations for my brother and me. I almost didn't shower for almost like a whole year at one point. So I had like a pretty sad childhood. And so when I came into high school and college, my whole thing was, okay, I just need to figure out how I can get money, because it seems like people who have money have, they have clothes and they have houses and they have beds and like all of these things. So how do I get money? I just need to do really good in school. If I do good in school, I'll have a good job. When I have a good job, I'll have money. spoiler alert, that's kind of not how that works, right? So I focused all my time and effort on education. First person in my family to go to college, University of Illinois, greatest experience of my life. And then when I graduated, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing now. Like, this was the end of my plan. And that's when I realized I don't actually know anything about money. I don't know how to manage it. What is this 401k that's being offered at work? Why am I like paying on my credit cards and my student loans, but the balance isn't going down? Like, I don't get it. And so that's when I decided to just start learning everything I could about money and how it works. And, that started around 22, and now I'm in my like 30 somethings. And it was in the last like maybe 7 to 10 years-ish, I started realizing that nobody else knew anything about money either. I just assumed everybody else had learned it from their parents. And so being able to like sit down and I think clearly articulate without all the jargon how some of this stuff works was really like hitting the nail on the head for a lot of people. And that's when I realized, oh, okay, the issue here is not that this stuff is hard, it's just unintuitive and new to you and filled with a lot of jargon. So then, just helping out my friends and family here and there. And then I started She-Wolf of Wall Street just for funsies. Just thought like, oh, I really like talking about this stuff. And I realized that there was a big need and desire for people to learn how to manage their money. People are sick and tired of feeling like they're just hustling day and night with nothing to show for it. And it's exhausting. And it's like, what is the light at the end of the tunnel? I don't know what to do. Am I even doing it right? This is like such a black box. And so I think that's, kind of how I got to this point was it's just my own lived experience.
Yeah, Wall Street uses that terminology and that jargon on purpose to confuse us. If only there was a website that decomplicated that. Somebody write that down. But you're absolutely right. All right, Syama, you're launching a podcast. It's about to launch. The trailer's out. It's called Getting Rich Together. You didn't start down this road either. How did you get to it, and what's the point of having that podcast? What are you trying to do with it?
Sure. Thank you, Caleb. So Getting Rich Together, just the trailer launched on Spotify today. My producers got that out. So please go and follow. And this journey for me, it really became proactive about 5 years ago. I was going through a personal divorce and also a business divorce. So that was really difficult. It led me down the path of writing an email to 50 girlfriends and saying, hey guys, I need to know what you're doing with your money because I need some answers. There's really not many places I can go to. My parents didn't grow up with money. I wasn't taught anything. And so what I got back was actually really fascinating. About 25% of the people that wrote me back were like super freaked out and thought it was really taboo and sort of offended. Another 25% of people said they had wealth managers and didn't really know what they were doing with their money. Another percentage of people didn't even think they had enough to do anything with. And then the other quarter of people who got back to me were like, hey, Syama, I want to come on this journey with you. And so that sent me down the path of leading conversations around women and wealth through my own personal exploration of how the hell to get this done. And so Getting Rich Together is an expander podcast where all of us can learn from women who we know and admire, their money stories, and how they're tied to their values. Because what I realized is having a list of things to do were great, but they ended up staying on my to-do list if I didn't understand why it was important and why that mattered to me.
Yeah, so smart. And a lot of people can relate if you just get personal and tell them where you came from, works for you, works for a lot of people because it's the relatability, right? So when it comes to working with influencers or not influencers, but people who are building businesses, we're talking about people who are also setting trends from the editor's desk, right? You have to have this balance of setting the trends yourself at InStyle, but also listening to the people who are doing that and then working with them. So how do you do that successfully and make that balance between what you guys think is happening out there as editors and what people like Amanda and others are noticing and tapping into, not just in finance, but across the industries?
Yeah, so I think, it's meeting our readers where they're at, exactly as you're saying. And something I said on the earlier panel is we want to be part of the conversation in style. We want to be, listening, consuming exactly what our readers are so that we're actively contributing. If we're behind, if we're too reactive, we've already missed the conversation. It doesn't have that authenticity that Ramona was speaking about that we know that our readers really relate to. So whether that's, just the knowledge gathering that we know our readers have a high household income in a lot of circumstances, and we know that they'll purchase luxury. We know that they will spend money if they know that the brand that they're purchasing has value. That they're looking to InStyle, they're looking to us as individual editors to say, this is worth it. This is something that you can trust. And it's really speaking to them in that moment of need or that moment of desire. And again, it's about authenticity and just being real in that way to say, this is actually worth spending money on, whether that means, it will last, it will be something you can resell, which I just think is relatable and something that's, again, real. We're not saying that buying a $4,000 handbag is right for everyone, but if you're going to buy it, this is the one to buy because then it will have life beyond this moment. And that's something that some advertisers or some brands might not like because they don't like the idea of reselling. But we know that's how real people actually behave. And we're not here, InStyle is not trying to, sell our readers on something that's not authentic to them because that's not how we behave as real people.
Yep, great point. Amanda, let's talk about spending and spend shaming and how that is sort of, really where a lot of this began with financial influencers and information on social media. Don't buy that latte, put it in your 401k instead. Look, financial wellness and holistic financial wellness is about smart spending too. So talk to us about broadening the picture about it's not just saving and investing, it's not spend shaming, it's a whole universe of concepts when it comes to financial wellness.
Yeah, totally. And I think the thing that I noticed when I went down this path of like trying to find consumable information was, especially towards women, it was like couponing and saving $2 here. And I was like, what the, like, I don't think saving $4 on my coffee is going to allow me to retire. Like, let's continue the conversation. So I think it really all comes down to intentionality. And what I've noticed that my community really likes is that I'm like, I give you the approval to go spend some of your hard-earned money. You don't have to save every dollar. Like, life is hard. And quite frankly, that plan kind of sucks a little bit. Like, you should get to spend some of your money, but it's a fine line between like, don't go YOLO your whole life away, but then also don't be a hermit. It's just getting really intentional about the things that are really important to you and just giving them permission to say like, okay, I want this, I can afford it, and it's okay to buy it. Because I think it's been ingrained in our heads for a long time, especially the information that's been targeted towards women is it's shameful to buy, like what you were saying.
Right. Do you notice just in your own posts, what type of content resonates the most? Is it about the spending? Is it about the savings? Is it about the tips? What do people want to hear mostly from you, or what do they respond to more often?
I think it's back to the first question, which is all around authenticity. Because people can see right through you if you're not authentic, like from day one, right? So my most popular series is a budget breakdown series that I do, where people like send in how much money they make and what they spend their money on, and people eat that up because they're like, I don't know what's the right amount to spend on my mortgage or rent, or like how much should I be shopping every month, or how much should I spend on my groceries? I don't know. It's just been this black box. So I think people love the transparency around that, and then also. Just a post the other day that it was just kind of like on my heart. I was like, I'm just going to talk about my background. And it was about how much unlearning I had to do in relation to growing up in poverty and then spending money now. And it was about things that I like splurging on. So like swimming for my dog. Like as I like drive to it some days, I'm like, I went almost a whole year without showering and my dog goes swimming 2 times a week. Like what level up here, right? And so I think it's just like, again, authenticity, transparency around all of the money topics.
Money is just a means to an end, right? And that's your point, is like, what's the end goal? You work backwards from whatever life you're trying to build. And especially for folks who've grown up in poverty or who've grown up, working class, the last thing we want to feel is deprivation, right? And budgeting, I think a lot of the budgeting, old school budgeting was like deprivation based. People want to be inspired. How do I live my best life when I only got a few coins? And then they want to know how to do that, right? It's the inspiration, the story, the how, and then the actually, how do I do it, right? The 50, 20, 30 plan is an easy way. There's other ones. But I think the systems building of how to do the money piece is actually the next kind of piece that we have to really embrace.
Yeah, I think in really good financial planning, we talk about what it costs to be you and what does it cost to be the you want to be. So when people say, I'm never going to have enough, or I'm going paycheck to paycheck, you say, well, what does it actually cost to be you on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis? And the you want to be, what do you think that's going to cost? Working backwards from that, so important. Let's talk about inspiration for you. Where do you get it for what you do? Why do you, what triggered you in the first place? You talked about what you've been through, but in terms of like the content you're putting out and you intend to put out, where's that going to come from?
What's really fascinating is the most incredible things have happened after I've interviewed these women, which is they're transformed. And so what I've realized is that in the process of interviewing to share stories with all of you, these women are finding their lives really impactful by being able to own their stories. And to give you an idea, some of those questions are around, what was your money story growing up? What were the people around you like? All the way through to, what do you like to spend money on today? And what is legacy building? What do you want to leave as an impact? And so asking those questions, I think, and they're simple questions, and we can all do them for ourselves, but there's something powerful about someone holding space for you to see your own identity in that mirror. And so that is really the source of the content. It has nothing to do with me, which is maybe why I find it to be the most rewarding. And it has everything to do with all of the women at the end who said, Syama, wow, I didn't even realize this about myself. And that is gratifying. And that is how I believe we then create the pipeline to say, I want to make some changes for my life. What are the tools and systems and things that are available to me now that I know that I want something to be different?
Yeah, well, I would challenge you on that. I would say that you bring out that in people in conversation. So it's about asking the right questions.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk about working with brands, brand partnerships, because a lot of this is heading that way or is already there. So let's start with you, Amanda, on what works. What works successfully when you're working with a brand? How do you know it's going to work? What are the rules for the road? Do you have a little checklist that you make where you say, are we aligned here? What has it, give us an example or two of that was right down the middle. That is exactly where we want to be as a brand and as a personality.
Yeah, so I think the key to a successful partnership is for the brand to also listen to the finfluencer. We're using that term here right now. Yeah, is to listen to the finfluencer, because I would say early on, I am somebody who does not do like a million partnerships. I'm like, I don't want to be a billboard for 1,000 things. I want to instead share things I'm really passionate about. And I would say the ones that have been unsuccessful is when they come to me and they're like, you need to say these exact words, it needs to be this color, you need to be wearing this shirt. And I'm like, this doesn't feel right. And those are the ones that flop when there's just no back and forth. So I don't do those anymore, but I learned about them. And then I would say the ones that, I would say then it also goes the other end where I feel like I have no direction. And I'm like, what is the goal of this campaign? The perfect scenario is when we're both working together. And I know that it might sound just like a broad, vague answer, but truthfully, when we're both working together, like, give me the feedback. It won't hurt my feelings if you think it sucks. Like, I can redo it. It will be okay. I want it to be good too. I want you to get your money's worth. Otherwise, it makes me feel bad if it doesn't do well. So I would say that. And then I would say, as far as like, what's good, like for financial influencers specifically, everything costs money. So you can really work with any brand at all. And as long as you're okay with acknowledging that things cost money, like what you were saying is, some people want to buy luxury items. It's okay, just come out and say, hey, we know this is a luxury item. And, like, it's okay to spend some of your money if this is something you want. I think that's okay. And then there's the budget route, right? Like, a campaign I did with a cell phone brand, it was a budget option that eats up so much of people's bill. It was a no-brainer partnership. So I think the most successful ones when you work together and that you're okay with acknowledging the financial piece of it.
Yeah. Let's talk about it from the brand trust perspective, right? You and I are stewards of brands. You have to protect your brand, the InStyle brand, also protect the partner's brand, but also make sure that messaging is right. So how do you strike that balance when you're looking at potential partnerships? And you and I look at these all the time, but also working with other people.
Well, my CRO is in the room, and she's a great partner. And I think, the thing I think about InStyle is steward is a great word, because I'm the editor-in-chief right now. I wasn't before. There will be someone hopefully after me. The brand will live a long life. It's a legacy. it has an identity that's really strong, and the same exact way you can sniff out something that's not authentic. We really want to work with partners that feel like they have the same alignment, the same mission. They're trying to reach an audience that we're reaching as well. And we know our audience. That's our superpower, right? Like we know the people that we're talking to. We're meeting them where they're at. We say that over and over and over. And if we're working with a brand or a partner that doesn't feel right, I think you see that right away. It's the editors that we have on the staff that, again, are just being true to themselves, and that fits with the InStyle brand. And so any kind of partnership we do, it should feel seamless, because otherwise you can see it from a mile away, and if it doesn't remain true to us, it's not worth it in the long haul. The brand itself is so much more valuable than one deal.
Yeah, I face that all the time. We've been around for 25 years, so there's a lot of history there, and it doesn't take much to lose that trust these days. You have to be ultra sensitive to it, and getting that back is a long road.
And it makes it that much more valuable, I think, to our partners, because you want to give them the most. Of course, we want to make them happy, but we also need to make our readers and us happy. So the partners that we do have are that much more precious, because we know it's right. We know it's what's best for both of us, and that feels really good.
Yeah. So translate that to working with businesses now through your company, Wealthbuild.ai. They want all of those things, but they're coming at it from a business perspective, not necessarily a title like an InStyle or an Investopedia or an Amanda, who's got her own brand out there, or Syama. How does that work when you're talking to businesses and enterprises?
Questions that come up though around trust, for sure. I think one of the things is that you got to be more cognizant of things like compliance, right? In terms of messaging, understanding the bank's bottom line. I think that's often the mistake that a lot of financial institutions make, that they're so big and marketing wants one thing, the insurance department wants another, right? There's different products that they're trying to sell, and one message doesn't sell all those products, right? And so I think it's really important to be working very closely and strategically with them. Right now, we have a big relationship with the NASDAQ Foundation, and we do a lot of work around investor education and community. And one of the campaigns that we're working on is money makeovers. And so working with cosmetic brands to really bring out sort of this confidence around not only looking good, but feeling good with your money, right? And I think that's the kind of authenticity that they're looking for, that's like, and we can then match our product, our company's product, with what that message is. So I think it's just really figuring out from the corporation's perspective, what's their bottom line, what's the bigger sort of picture here. We often do a lot of that with our partners, is we're like, look, you're looking at it in the single vertical, there's much more to be had here if we do this messaging. And I think that's what you're saying, is that we actually are talking to our customers all the time, right? So a bank might not be, but I'm talking to their customers all the time. And so I think that's the kind of knowledge that we're bringing to the table to help shape really targeted types of campaigns. And I think that I don't think it's that much different from a product perspective, except that we just have a lot more scrutiny from a compliance perspective.
So let's pitch it forward a little bit into how AI is affecting this already, how it's going to affect this. Obviously, Web3 and the metaverse, a lot of brands doing work not in the physical world, where a lot of the rules aren't really written yet, but the same trust rules apply, right?
No, absolutely. So we made a decision a couple of months ago to move to the IBM platform for Watson. And one of the reasons we did that is that they have a trusted relationship with enterprise brands. And we know that AI is going to have a lot of conversations around risk, particularly in financial services. And as we have built a financial co-pilot that's meant to sort of answer all of life's financial questions for a end company like a financial institution, we have to ensure that those answers are correct, right? You can't have hallucinations in financial services. So we're very careful about how we're looking at that from a compliance perspective and what language we're using. And I think that that's what we're going to see more of, is that financial institutions are going to really want to partner, especially in the AI space, with trusted brands.
Right. And the one thing AI gives us a lot of is data. And we love that because it helps us make better decisions, but it's about what you do with it, right? So we look at it as editors. We heard from Joetta and team earlier, this is what we do kind of in Dotdash Meredith. We get a lot of people coming in, so we know what they're looking for. You are making decisions Amanda, for your channels about what to put content out on. What kind of data are you looking at? I know we talked about what worked in terms of posts, but are you looking at things out there beyond your social spaces to find that inspiration for what to talk about?
For sure. I would say, though, that I heavily rely on my community when it comes to what I'm going to talk about on my platform, just because I feel like I've really found my people. I'm like, what do they want to know about? Because like it takes time and effort and energy and brain power to create content, and so it's really stinks when it doesn't do well. So for me, it's I'm looking at all of like the Instagram data, but also from my website, I'm just looking up, like SEMrush on the SEO tool, things like that. So it's all of that, and then also just things that people submit to me. So whether it's just even doing like a Q&A, you can always see whatever a common theme is. Like with the student loan announcement like 6 months ago, that was like a hot topic. It's like you didn't have to be you didn't have to have like a website where 1 million people were like visiting you every week. It was pretty clear just based on the questions that people were asking.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. And 300,000 followers or so, that's a pretty good sounding board. That's like asking the city of Albuquerque what you should be talking about. So that's pretty helpful. So you're in the building phase, Syama, of building this new podcast, building a new audience. How do you intend to scale what you're doing? And is it important for you to get to 300,000, 1 million?
I'm changing women one episode at a time. What I have found to be the most interesting as I've been thinking about partnerships and branding, brand collaborations, have actually been, this is the best question, how do you teach your children, or how are you teaching them about money? And through that question, actually, I've identified a few platforms where I'm like, wow, these are actually services and products that people who I'm talking to are using actively and endorsing them. And so that's sort of how I'm looking at, what can those initial partnerships really start to look like, is really through the lens of what are these women using and what's actually helping. And so as I look to branch this out, I have to tell you, it's caught wildfire. It went from an idea to asking some friends, and boom, all of a sudden, everyone wants to talk about this. And so when it comes to scaling, my hope is that it really catches fire from the women who hear it and share it with their friends. My feeling is it starts off as an incredible, best-kept secret. Maybe it ends up being not so small of a secret, but that is really the intent, because I think that there is a community to be launched through this vehicle of being able to own these stories.
Yeah, well, it's no longer a secret. We're all in on the secret, so we're going to help you spread the word on the podcast. Let's talk about the future for all of your businesses and where you think it's going, where you want it to go. What's the vision going forward? Ramona, let's start with you. You're a serial entrepreneur, so I have a feeling you're going to be starting a few more businesses. But in terms of what you're doing now, what would you like? What's
Hopefully
a manifestation?
this is the big one. As anyone who's an entrepreneur in the world, it's a long journey. And I think, so part of the journey of an entrepreneur in tech is that you're following the technology and the advances in it. When I started my first company, My Money, My Future, we didn't have generative AI in the form that we have it now. So one of the ways that we were able to adapt what we did before was, okay, people want financial education, but now how can we give it to them in a streamlined way? FinTech V1 unbundled the bank. People are looking to rebundle. Nobody wants 100 apps to manage their money, right? You kind of want one vertical, one place where you can get the education, get the advice, get the content, and then take the action. And I think that's what we're looking towards with the integration of AI and APIs. And as we follow that technology, really figuring out what works. How do we get product market fit for the business side? And then how do we get product market fit with the direct-to-consumer side, which I think, even though I know investors don't like to hear this, I still think direct-to-consumer hasn't been done well in fintech in a way that we have imagined. We still don't have a top female sort of IPO'd company in fintech, right? I mean, we have Elevis, which is great, and Sally's been trailblazing, but like there needs to be more. And I think that's the future for me, is like, how do we see more diversified fintech products and companies?
Yeah, good point. She's talking about Elevis, right? Sally Krawcheck's company, which has done incredible things in terms of opening up the platform. All right, what's next for you? Bigger, better, 3 million, 30 million, television, movies. What do you think is next for your brand? How do you see the future?
Yeah, I really just want to be like a one-stop shop. But when I say that, I don't mean that I need to like do everything myself. I'm with you, Syama. Like, I am all about collaboration, and I think we go further when we go together. So I am the person who has no problem like plugging other people's like podcast or articles. I'm like, yeah, I have an Instagram and I have a blog and a website and I have courses, but I also can recognize the fact that people learn information in different ways. And if that didn't hit the mark for you, here are some other people that you might love who are doing it well. So for me, yeah, I want to like be able to reach more people, whether it's through social media or just the internets in general, but also to just have some more like strategic collaborations and partnerships.
Yeah, I think that reciprocity, that amplification, that only helps. And when you shine the light on other people, usually if they're good people, they shine it back on you. All right, for InStyle, you guys are at an interesting moment. You've got a great history, but you're also, I know, taking the brand in new directions. What does that look like?
So InStyle is turning 30 this year, which is amazing. I think, I spoke about the superpower before. I think something that InStyle has and all these women here have is that brand trust. And especially when it comes to money, when it comes to where to spend your money, that is something that our readers need and want. There's so many voices, social media, it's a big year in the world, in America, a lot of conversations to be had. Having that brand trust is so important. And I think, what's next for InStyle is, again, leaning into that, what we value so much, which is our readers knowing that what they're going to get when they come to InStyle is exactly what they're looking for or what they didn't know they were looking for. That surprise and delight that we were speaking about earlier. And I think, when it comes to what comes next, it's innovating, it's meeting where they are, whether that's TikTok, whether that's Instagram, and it's us being nimble and excited to grow with our readers and the next generation of readers. Gen Z is so hungry for information, so fast with information, and that's exciting, and it's just opportunity. So excited for what comes next.
Good. We will look forward to the next 30 years. Let's throw it open to the crowd for questions if you have any. If not, I'm going to start asking you questions. So right here in front, I know we have some.
First of all, fire outfit. I said it once, I said it twice. So we were in Cannes over the summer, and the overwhelming theme message that came across is authenticity is our greatest form of currency when it comes to brand, marketing, agency. And, it's really important, I think, as a company or as an individual when you're, kind of your brand equity, to have that authenticity come across, right? When we looked at kind of movements from a political and social aspect, like your previous panelists talked about, you look at, Planned Parenthood, you look at, pro-choice, women talking about their own stories, right? It caught like wildfire. You looked at the Me Too movement. These are powerful female-centric movements, right? Sharing their story. How do we catch that, lightning in a bottle when it comes to women and finance and sharing their personal message, their personal story, and destigmatizing it and getting it out there? Because, we didn't learn it at home, we didn't learn it at school. How do we share that? How do you guys see that looking across each of your own brands and encouraging your people, your followers, your communities, and sharing that in an authentic way, to get it out there?
Good question. Let's go down the line.
These last 2 days being here at South by, I have seen so many female activations around like women, investing, money, power. I mean, it has been on fire these last 2 days, and I think it's really just the beginning. And so today we're all sitting up here talking about money, which is maybe not something that would have happened last year or the year before. So we happen to be here in this conversation at the right time. But this is also the time when I hear authenticity, I think vulnerability and risk. And so when I hear someone saying, I want to be authentic, I say, well, are you willing to get vulnerable? Are you willing to talk and share about the things that maybe you wouldn't want everyone else to hear and know about? And so through this vehicle of Getting Rich Together, my goal is it's an expander podcast. If you can hear someone tell a story like Amanda's and hear someone else tell a very different story, right? And you can say, well, maybe I'm here, maybe I'm there. I don't know where I'm at, but I can own my own voice. And so that is my contribution, and I feel so passionately that we are just getting started.
$60 trillion of wealth is going to be transferred in the Great Wealth Transfer. It's happening. And what we need to understand as financial institutions and influencers, that we need to get out there now if we want to start capturing those dollars in financial institutions, if we want to own that journey. I think if I look at Dove, they did a great job in a lot of their ads around sort of alternative beauty, if you will, right? And I thought, oh, that's smart. They kind of took this abstract sort of empowerment message around and then lined it with deodorant, right? If they can do that, how do we as a company become the Adidas of money? Right, or the Nike of money. And I think that's something that we're spending a lot of time on right now, is thinking through, like, how do you make a movement around closing the wealth gap that doesn't feel over politicized, that still sort of, wants to work with financial institutions, that's really about taking action. So I think there's opportunities right now, and I think with the folks like this, we're going to start to see a big wave of those messages, so that it starts to become like a Me Too, if you will, quotable moment.
Great point. We need that 60 trillion to move a little bit faster, though. Can we accelerate that wealth transfer that everybody's been talking about? Because I'm still waiting. Amanda, you want to take it?
Yeah, I think it's just doing what we're doing already, but more of it. So I think that, you're always hearing like, oh, well, is it too late for me to do that? Like, I feel like I missed my mark. And it's like, no, it's not pie, right? There's enough for everybody. So jump on board. It's just, let's compound what we already have going on.
I mean, I would agree with all these women, what they said, but I also think it's, again, just being open and sharing those stories and having those unique voices, or the voices that start the conversation. So, I mean, for us, my beauty director, Lauren Valenti, is a great example. She has access to everything, right? She gets beauty treatments for free. She tries all these things. But at the end of the day, she's a real person who will tell someone what she thinks they should actually try. Starting that and level setting to say, let me, be real, let me share what I actually think, and starting a conversation. I think that is something that can happen at any moment, and just starting and setting the stage is what's important.
Yeah, great point. Great point. I'll tell you what, on the authenticity, vulnerability thing, I do a lot of posting myself. The thing that gets the most attention is when I talk about my mistakes. Because they're like, oh, you're the editor-in-chief. You must be a flawless investor. Hardly. It's being like, look, I've made a lot of mistakes, and talking about those, that gets people's attention. We have time for one or two more over there.
Okay, fascinating panel. Congratulations to all of you. I do have a question. As you guys reflect on this sort of $60 trillion market that females have a small percentage of access to, when I think of Gen X, or sort of Gen X, Gen Y, but beyond that, the millennials and so forth, do any of you have an intention to sort of utilize your influence in social platforms to be able to educate really young women, sort of the tweens, teens, early 20s? Because I think part of that accessibility is starting to understand this and build it at an early stage. And I feel like our academics and sort of education systems really fail young ladies in that capacity. So I'm just curious.
Great point.
I'll go ahead and jump in there. I'm giving a talk in about a month at a new company group called Her Workplace, and where the majority of the women there are Gen Z. And what's so interesting, and it's something that I share in my trailer, but it's that I came from this incredible background in fashion. I was a buyer at Barney's, I ran a division at Gucci, but I had way more of a 401k as far as like an investment in handbags than I did in having any darn cash. And so for me, a big part of this is sharing the lessons and sharing the things and saying, hey, maybe you don't have wealthy parents who are going to tell you that you can do a 401k matching, right? But let me tell you, I sure wish I did, And so for me, it's about getting in front of those people and sharing what I wish I knew different.
Yeah. Financial literacy can't start early enough, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that the challenge has been that when the kids are younger, they don't really have anyone to go ask these types of questions to, right? So it's like we kind of have to also work on like the parents, because they are the ones who are leading the children, and it's like if you just develop a thing and hand it to a kid, then they have no resources to go back to. So I think that's the challenge, and I think it's what she was saying earlier, is that we have to meet them where they are, which is on YouTube and just social media in general, and making it fun so that it's not like a big boring chore, like another homework assignment, but like actually this is cool and interesting and allows me to do things I want in life.
Yeah, the lemonade stand is a great place to start, and I'm not kidding. They say, I made $50 today, mom or dad, and you're like, well, what were your cost of goods, And who actually fronted those costs of goods? Me, your bank. But seriously, like early lessons, family financial planning, also teachers, training the teachers. That's a big deal going forward. Do we have time for one more?
When we were in Cannes, I had a really great opportunity.
Can flex, sorry.
Can flex, humble flex, not so humble flex. I had a really great opportunity to ask a question, and it's a question whenever I'm in a room with a person that I really admire. The question I usually ask is, what was your greatest financial move that you've made in your career? But you mentioned something great. The best kind of like feedback you get is when you fumble the bag, right? So I asked Spike Lee, I was like, what was your greatest financial move? He's like, no, I'm going to do you one better. I'm going to tell you when I fumbled the bag.
Spike Lee flex. I hope you're
He's like, I'm going to tell you when I fumbled the bag. He's like, look, I was on the vineyard. This guy comes up to me. He's like, he's crazy looking, kind of disheveled. He's like, oh man, I got the next thing. It's a shoe, right? Everybody knows, Spike Lee is famous for, making the Jordan kind of like the thing, right? Mars Blackman. And so this year was the anniversary of the Mars Blackman Jordan. And so he tells me this story or everybody there, about this guy comes up to him, takes him to his car, opens the trunk, and says, hey, I want your investment, $10,000. That's it, nothing for Spike Lee. Shows him the ugliest shoe he's ever seen. And Spike said it was the biggest mistake he ever made was not investing in this. Any idea what the shoe was? Crocs. So what was your biggest financial mistake? Anybody?
Yeah, I'll start. I have a lot, but but I'll start with one, which was in my beginning stages of learning about investing, I joined a lot of angel syndicates. And for those of you guys who don't know angel syndicates, it's basically women getting together and co-investing and at smaller check sizes. And what I did is I felt so lucky to be at the table and to invest, and I was so excited to sort of get started, but I was also feeling a lot of FOMO. And so instead of asking a lot of questions, I was like, oh, if this person's doing it and that person's doing it, then maybe I should do it too. And so it turned out a couple years later that some of these companies ended up going south. Now, obviously in angel investing, that's a big risk and you take that risk. But I wish that I had trusted myself and actually asked myself, do I understand this? And what is the long-term ramifications of this? What does this mean? And so I had a very expensive lesson, tens of thousands of dollars in lessons. Which is not so bad for like an education and money, but definitely learned risk tolerance. And so now instead of saying that person's doing it or this person's doing it, I go, how does this fit in with my financial strategy, with my journey? And I trust myself a lot more.
Ramona, what was yours?
Very quickly, I split time between New York and LA, so I've lived on both coasts for a long time. And I've lived in every gentrified or pre-gentrified neighborhood between LA and New York. I should have bought property in every one of those neighborhoods. Fort Greene, Boyle Heights, like all these places that now are ridiculously expensive, and I could have bought because I was there early.
Yeah. Amanda?
Yeah, so for me, it was just waiting to start and being brave enough to start. At the last corporate job that I worked at, I've always had an interest in money, and I noticed that a lot of my coworkers, they weren't investing in their 401k, even though we had a match, and I was helping people one-off. And I was the leader of our women's ERG group, and I was like, oh, I'll just make a little financial course, which took me months of my own time to build. And then like a big old freaking idiot, I just put it on our corporate platform. 700 people took it in the first month that I set it out. And they were like, this is better than any paid course we've ever taken. And I was like, wait, people pay for stuff like this? And then I got a $50 gift card to Starbucks as a thank you. So that sucked.
You have one?
I think for me, it's more of a personal leaving money on the table during job negotiations and conflating, or I guess missing the ball in terms of being excited about a dream job or a great opportunity and forgetting your own value and that they want you for a reason and that you always need to ask for more. And that's something that, when I'm hiring or speaking to my own team, I try to tell people, and if it's the best and final, it really truly is, because I think people should make as much money as I can pay them. And the other piece of that is also asking more questions and having the financial literacy to say, okay, that's a salary, but what else? What else is there? What is the matching? What is the bonus structure? What is, even the vacation days and things like that can make this competitive in a way that exactly. And things that might not be written on paper, but there's almost always room to negotiate. And just because you're excited about a job doesn't mean they're not excited about you and that you're worth it.
I invested in Lehman Brothers right as the world was crumbling, bought it from 80 all the way down to 2. And I keep it in my portfolio, even though it's bankrupt. Any ticker that goes bankrupt has an F on it. I keep it in there so I can look at it every day. That costs a lot of money. What a panel. We could go on forever, but I know we're between you and a reception, and I don't want to be anywhere near that ground. So big thanks to Sally Holmes, Ramona Ortega, Amanda Wolfe, and Syama Bunten. And thanks to Assembly. Thanks for having us.